So take it away, Darrin.
All right. Thank you. And I appreciate the invite to come and talk to you a little bit about our resources. Make sure we got this here. Okay, now I know where the stop share button is, so I won't hijack the whole meeting in the future. Uh, Susan asked me to come and just share a new resource from AARP. In the past, we've had a long-standing walk audit toolkit that's been out and used widely around the country with much success. And just this last fall, AARP worked with the League of American Bicyclists to develop the bike audit toolkit. So to take what we've done with the walk audit, which also, it asks you to record the walk audit toolkit, says, is anybody biking in the area? But this is just a more in-depth look at what's the bike infrastructure look like in our community. So you can find this. I'm going to pull it up here and share a link in the chat. But you can find it on our webpage at this link. You can order there's downloadable PDFs that you can access at any point in time should you want to. You can order printed copies. I will tell you right now, I tried to order printed copies and they're on back order. So can't order printed copies in the near future, but hopefully that back order will be corrected. But it's 32 pages. It's information and photo filled. Much like our walk audit toolkit has involved, it also then begins to include a dictionary to kind of get everybody on the speed, because it's really geared towards somebody who doesn't live in this world. If we live and work in this world, we can throw out these terms and speak over people's head. But if you really want to get the average community member that's out there and understanding this infrastructure, then we need to provide terminology so they can talk to us that understand that more. And so the walk audit or the bike audit toolkit contains all of that. We approached it as the problem that there are too many streets in the U.S. Are designed exclusively for automobiles. I like to say it's my mantra is decenter the automobile. I'm not an anti-car person. You can see the car picture in my background. I've got car models on there. I'm an auto enthusiast. But when I travel around my community of Madison, I love to travel by foot or by bike. I hate driving. I love that road trip auto experience. And so what we want to do is just really get that whole mentality of decentering the automobile in our planning in our communities, and recognizing that not everybody has a car. I know that WisDOT has its non-driver website, and they say about 31% of Wisconsin residents don't drive. Madison, it's a little bit higher that I'm familiar with. And so, we don't want those folks, no matter what their reason is for not driving a car, whether it's legally because they're not old enough or they've lost their license, whether it's medical, financial. We all know how expensive it is to own and operate an automobile. So we want to just take it in and have everybody looked at here. And so the solution was, we can have anecdotal evidence that things don't exist or we need to see more things, but until you have the data that supports it and you start going out and systematically looking at your community, you really can't make a strong case for it. And so that's why any of our bike audit toolkits or walk audit toolkits are designed to do. So we also firmly believe, AARP firmly believes, that streets are designed, our bike-friendly streets are good for people in general, no matter who you are, whether you're driving. They're a more comfortable street to drive on, they're a comfortable street to walk on, they're a comfortable street to bike on. And so that's why, we're wholeheartedly go in here. And here's an example that we find coming out of South Bend, Indiana. The top photo is what the street looked like. It was a one-way street, multi-lanes of travel in one direction. And when they reconfigured it, they actually widened the sidewalks and they put bike paths in and they reduced the number of travel lanes. This is what we want people to begin thinking about as they look at that. And also begin thinking about, I have a good friend, Jonathan Stalls, who has a social media campaign called Pedestrian Dignity, and you'll find him on Instagram and TikTok. And he has really opened my eyes to just the dignity of not traveling in an automobile and the indignity most times that people face. all their experience and what they have to do when they walk through that. And so we really just want to uplift that and say, if you're not traveling by an automobile, we want to make it a great place for people to travel, no matter what your mode of transportation is. So the bike audit toolkit is really designed as a simple, easy to use tool. We give you some instructions on how do you get ready for this. The identify the location, pick a certain area that you're going to do. You're going to decide on the type of bike audit, on bike or off bike. Do you want to ride it along? Obviously, you'll be able to track a little bit more, but you also have to stop frequently in order to record your things, unless you're way more talented than I am and can actually record these while you're riding, but I don't recommend that. Also think about who to invite the people to participate. I know on walk audits, we get a real good selection of a cross-section of the community that are out there. Always, I found, invite elected officials, invite your local council person or village representative or whatever municipality you live in, get them involved too to understand this. And then you just choose the date and time that you want to do and advertise it out there. To find the information, there are a variety of worksheets that AARP has available. They're all done on single 8.5 by 11s. You can download these on demand, in order to supplement the materials. And there's just a wide variety of focuses that they'll have on the bike audit. So we encourage you to look through those at that link that I shared. And so here's just, a more in-depth picture of what they look like. Some of them are designed as just simple checkbox that you're going to rate things. Others, have room for writing comments or text in there, much like our walk audit toolkit was designed to do. And then we just go out and do the walk audit or the bike audit. You're going to learn along the way what you're going to be looking for, and then when you collect the details and the data, what we always encourage you to is before you do it, have a plan in place for who you're going to share that data with. Is it going to be, your local elected official? Is it going to be your city's planning department? Whatever that might be, have an idea of how you're going to do it, or you're going to do it in segments and you're going to wait till you get all of these things and share it out there. But really just, think about how that is going to be, the proof is going to be shared. So again, within the toolkit is just some common language stuff that we have. And so, AARP provides all of that language on the streetscape and what people are going to run into so that we can, coherently talk to traffic engineers or planners or whoever that might be. And they understand, and we understand what they're looking for, and they understand what we're talking about. So we give you that terminology in there. We also describe the different types of bike lanes that you'll find, the most common types out there. Whether they're protected or not protected, however that might be. And you'll find that all within the toolkit. We also go a little bit about, describing in layman's term a complete street and what that looks like. I know that, we have some municipalities that have adopted complete street programs. I know that, statewide that ordinance has been repealed. But we just want, for the local folks, whether you have it on policy or not, just to be able to have this idea of what these complete streets are about. And then we give some samples on how do you report this out? How do you share this information? What if you scheduled a time at your council meeting to be able to share this out? What does that look like? What do you have a meeting with your municipal employees to see this? So we give you some samples of how you might want to do that as well. And then strategies for designing safer streets. So just a collection of our experience of working with communities all across the country and what they've done, as well as, tapping on some of the worldwide stuff that the folks are doing. Because we just want to provide you with a good, overall picture of what biking looks like, no matter the size of the community. And then, you can figure out what works in your community. So yeah, we also just dive into more strategies, talk about traffic signaling and timing of that, how to make that more pedestrian and bike friendly. That's usually a simple fix that folks can do. I know in my own city of Madison, there'll be often times where, I'm at a light on my bicycle or as a pedestrian, and I notice, hey, it's just not timed right. And a simple email, they have a report form to the city of Madison. and usually within a day, they can go back out and change that timing if it works, within their scheme of things. And so they're really responsive. So hopefully, your community can look at that too. We look at, working with neighborhood community groups and how do you work collectively for this change. So it's not just a sole voice that's going out there. And then also encourage you to look at and join your city's bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee if you have one. And if you don't, work with your city to start one, so that you can, utilize this tool and others as a collective voice in getting that done. And so, this and others are found at the AARP library. The link I gave you is a direct link to the bike audit toolkit. But if you go to aarp.org/livable library, you'll find a whole bunch of other things. You'll find our time-tested walk audit toolkit, creating parks and public spaces for people of all ages, which also includes an audit structure in that too. So you can audit your public spaces to see how they are, and various other toolkits. So now we just encourage you, if it is something you want to use, just spread the word in your community and through your networks that these are out there. And if you have, suggestions on this as a resource, we encourage you to contact me. I'll drop my information in the chat there. I work here in Wisconsin specifically. I'm not part of the national office. But you can also reach out to our national partners on this and let them know how you're doing it. If you're doing a bike audit and you're putting it on social, tag our partners, either Livable or the Bike League, and let them know that you're using the resource. So that is my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Darrin, so much. You know what? When I was introducing you, I forgot to mention that Darrin is also on our steering committee for Active Wisconsin. So he serves in a variety of ways. So thank you. So I think we're a small enough group. If you have a question, just raise your hand or unmute and fire away.
And I'm dropping my email address in the chat so you can reach me. Has anybody used our walk audit toolkit in the past? Besides Susan, I know Susan has.
A lot.
Yes. What was anybody have any thoughts to share in using that? Aaron, I think you had raised your hand. Like, how did you find that as a tool for you to use?
Well, I was a part of 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin Community Transportation Academy, and we did that as a group, and it was very useful. I took lots of pictures during it, and I often look back at those pictures to show others in our community when I'm describing issues and opportunities for improvements. But I know that the city of La Crosse also used it when they're in the middle of updating their bicycle and pedestrian action plan. And they also are they just finished up using the bike audit toolkit as well. So they have been very inspired to incorporate these elements into their own planning efforts too.
Excellent, thank you.
I would be so curious to hear from anybody who's used the bike audit toolkit. I will comment just on the walk audit one that, and this would be the case with anything dealing with worksheets. When you're out there trying to take pictures, keep track of a clipboard and a pencil, talk to the people around you, watch out for traffic. Sometimes it can be hard to keep up with all the checklists and the worksheets. So very often what happens when I lead these groups is, well, I give out the worksheets and maybe, out of a group of 20 people, maybe 5 people will fill them out, but it's helpful to allow some time at the end for people to take notes and think back about what they've done, because it's a lot to keep up with, I have found.
It is.
And I know there was some discussion at one point of an app. I don't know if an app would be any easier or not. Go ahead.
Yeah, now when I go and do the workshops for the walk audits, I encourage somebody to have a scribe in the group, whose job it will be to to handle the workshop, and then somebody else that's in charge of taking pictures. And so then at least that's all done and it's not the same person doing those same things. But you always don't have that luxury of multiple people.
Steve, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is getting ready to undertake a bike and ped plan update. And that'll start this summer. And I'm wondering, for a community the size of Fitchburg, it seems infeasible to either have a consultant or volunteers cover the whole city. Do you have any advice on how to strategically do the most important places, or how would you suggest we handle that? Because we clearly will not be able to audit all the bike and ped infrastructure.
Yeah, I think, Steve, from what I've seen, and you touched on it, is try to identify, like, what are those priority areas, those areas we truly do need to understand. Maybe they haven't been looked at in the past, and so we need to go back and look at them there, or just try to name those places and focus on them. And then, over time, as you can get to others, then go out and do it. But especially in the development of the bike and ped plan, figure out, are we looking at certain corridors that we want to make sure we have those corridors all locked in before we kind of misalign our resources with what it is we're really trying to understand.
Anybody else have any suggestions for that?
I would recommend the same, identifying some priority areas. You could also look at any of your crash maps to see where some areas that have high pedestrian or bicycle crashes. That was really helpful with the city of La Crosse when they were identifying their priority areas, as well as if you do a initial community survey first and you hear from the public specific areas there.
That's a terrific idea. I'm sorry I got on late. Was the new bike and pedestrian crash maps by the Bike Fed mentioned previously? If not, I will describe them. So Ben, one of the Bike Fed Madison area employees, has developed an amazing resource, and I will put the map in the chat, the link to it when I'm done talking. But you can select any county in Wisconsin, any school district in that county, elementary, middle, or high schools. And then from the list of schools, you will see a PDF of the walking distance around that school with all the bicycle and pedestrian versus motor vehicle crashes since 2017. It's amazing. And, if you have a neighborhood school and you want to see your school, you can go right to it. And the crashes are marked by date and severity and whether they're bike or ped. So I love the thing, and I immediately printed out for the 4 elementary schools that serve Fitchburg, parts of Fitchburg, and took them to our transportation committee meeting, and we can see where our trouble spots are. For those of you who know the area, Fish Hatchery Road and McKee Road.
Thank you. David, I see your hand up.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to hop in to comment on Steve. I'm a resident of Fitchburg, although I work for Janesville. And I think my suggestion, along with what Aaron and Darrin suggested, was also looking at which destinations are most important for your community. I know there's a lot of grocery stores that are in more car-centered places and so on and so forth. So I think that could be a really useful way to prioritize your audits, which is to say, what's the most important? Maybe it's schools, maybe it's, coffee shop or a grocery store. I know that's something that we've been using in Janesville just to kind of think about where should we be trying to prioritize network improvements and so on.
Well, our 2010 bike and ped plan, as you know, was supervised by Anna Bijak, and
Yeah,
that's exactly the strategy she used.
well, I'm very grateful we were able to poach her, and so sorry for your loss, but
Damn
your
you.
loss is our gain.
I have a question for you, Darren. I'm wondering if this toolkit or if AARP generally would have resources or suggestions for the kinds of pushback that people tend to get when they're advocating for more bicycle infrastructure. Um, and I feel like there is some stuff that's specific to bicycles that you don't necessarily get with pedestrians so much because, you'll hear, well, we have long winters here, so nobody's going to bike in the winter, or we can't lose a parking lane, so there's no way we can fit a bike lane here, or um, you know, adding a bike lane will gentrify this neighborhood. Like any of those things that tend to come up, legitimate or not, as a way to shut down that kind of advocacy.
Yeah, I'll look on the website after I finish with these comments, because we have there are two main sources of information for AARP, just because if we had to make it complicated, we will. We have our livable communities, which is, where the bike audit lives at and goes under there. And so all of the resources that are there are also a collection of fact sheets. So they try to debunk a lot of those myths. So I'm not real sure what's out there on the bike infrastructure specifically. I do know there's stuff, I've used stuff like on road diets, and how to counteract those, the pushback against those. We also have another group called Public Policy Institute, or PPI, and I'll leave a link in the chat on that one as well. That's our think tank back in Washington, D.C., and there's a team of, actually, they're all planners and related in transportation and housing and zoning and land use, and they just research and produce white papers and reports on all of the stuff as it relates to the older adult populations, but really for anybody. And really, it really sets the stage for where AARP is thinking about these things. So I'll leave the PPI chat there. That's an often overlooked resource that people don't even realize that's there. So I'll look and see. And I know that we've also had a lot of stuff on complete green streets. That's a big push for AARP. And so I'll search for all those and drop those links in the chat.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Darren before we move on?
I actually got one. I'll have to look at the toolkit, but Darren, I was curious. Do you know if the toolkit goes into details on some of the interactions with like bike facilities and using a street that's also used for transit? Because I know sometimes looking out for the interaction between like a bike lane and a bus stop, or if a transit agency allows, like, is integrated with allowing bikes on their vehicles and things like that.
Yeah, honestly, Carl, I haven't had a chance to delve into it. The bike audit toolkit released fall of last year, and so any chance that I'd have to work on communities people really weren't interested in doing in the wintertime. We have some in community audits coming up that's scheduled for late spring and early summer, and I'll get more familiarity with it there. But yeah, I'm happy I can report back as I look into it, or encourage you all to look at it too.
Sounds great. Yeah, I definitely intend to use it, especially the walk audit as well. And we've had some heard some advocates wanting to really delve into the integration with transit. So definitely a area that needs some good thought and look at on the ground. How does that work?
Say, I know the walk audit toolkit has some has at least one worksheet on transit stops. So somebody pretty savvy could probably like combine these resources somehow, like looking at that, also looking at winter placemaking. So what you said, Darren, about like nobody wants to do a bike audit in the winter, but there are some people in Madison at least who, care about where they're putting the snow. If you pile it up in the bike lane, it doesn't make it very bikeable. So you could combine those. Brian, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me? So I'm in Sheboygan, and I'm part of a couple groups and book clubs that are sort of advocating for this type of thing, like pedestrian bike friendly things. In Sheboygan, I feel like I'm not really sure who in the city to really advocate towards. We don't really have a committee that deals with pedestrian and bike infrastructure other than maybe the Department of Public Works, but they're sort of just focused on just maintaining the streets, it seems like. I'm just curious what other cities have in terms of who to contact and who to advocate towards for this.
I will jump in. Public Works is not a bad place to start. So are you on the city staff, Brian?
No, I'm not. I
Okay.
don't remember how I found out about this. It might have been a group in Sheboygan called Sheboygan Active Transportation. But yeah, I just saw the link and decided to listen in.
No, everybody is welcome. I was just wondering. So, I think sometimes, I mean, there's the official positions people have in city staff, and sometimes it just helps to try to get to know who the people are, like either on staff and or council. Just see if anybody's a biker. Like figure out if there's a local champion that you can start talking to. And they're usually very excited to hear about people who care about those things too. So I'll just give an example. This is a preview for some updates I'll share. In the city of Beloit, they have a city manager who's only been there for a little over a year, and he's one of the only people who bikes every day. I mean, not through the winter necessarily, but he's known as the guy who likes to bike to work. So even though it's not officially part of his job to advocate for biking in Beloit, he kind of does. So, you know, do a little digging, I guess. Just sort of ask around, see who the bikers are, and see if you can catch anybody's ear at Public Works, because you know they're the ones who are going to like set those schedules and say yay or nay. But you'll figure out like kind of who's on your side and who you might need to talk into it. So that's the advice I would give. If somebody else has ideas, please.
I will add to. You mentioned a local advocacy group. I forget what you said their name was. If they're like Fitchburg and Madison Bikes and Sun Prairie Moves, they have made a detailed study of exactly who to talk to. And so you should link up with them and join them perhaps, but certainly discuss with them how to bring ideas forward of, you know, troublesome areas that need to be improved or things that are great that should be copied around your city.
I was also going to add too, I think metropolitan planning organizations are a good place to start. There is the Bay Lake RPC, which is a regional planning committee that houses the Sheboygan MPO. And I can send you the contact information for the transportation planner, Hina. She's a really good advocate, and that might be a good place to start to make connections there too.
Thank you.
I'm trying to keep up with all the links so I can add them to the notes. Lexi is suggesting that you connect with local public health as well. Throwing this into my notes here.
Yeah, and maybe if someone's more familiar with that area, but I just did a quick check of oftentimes physical activity or exercise, nutrition are kind of clumped together in a priority area in community health improvement plans. And oftentimes community coalitions are the ones that carry out that work. And typically those are comprised of multi-sector partners as well. So, you know, kind of an in there could kind of help you get a few connections.
And if I can just hop on that to encourage that, I have been doing that in Janesville, working with Rock County Public Health as well as their whole network of care providers. And they're really excited about kind of bringing public health and planning back together, because they have like an origin together back in the like early industrial cities of, hey, we need safe drinking water and so on and so forth. So anyways, there's a really nice opportunity there to tap into people who really care and are like deeply invested in health and well-being of folks. And I'm having a lot of success building a sustainable walking school bus program here in
Yeah, I will echo that as well. I actually work for our public health department in Walworth County. And so if your local public health doesn't have anything with pedestrian safety or bicycle safety, I'm sure they'd be more than happy for some input when it comes to time of doing their community health assessment and improvement plan, because if it's a large contingent of individuals who want that done, that can be put as a priority area if they have enough input from community members to make that so, and that would be something they would work on over the next 3 to 5 years then.
See, this is why we have a network. I couldn't have given you all those answers. All right. If you have more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to share my screen again. So I'm going to share a little bit of news from Active Wisconsin and the kinds of things I've been up to. Then I'm going to turn it over to Carl. This isn't a full list of everything we've been doing, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. First of all, I've been reading a book a month and posting little reviews on the Active Wisconsin blog, and that shows up in our e-news. So if you want to know what I'm reading, or if you have suggestions for what I should read next, please contact me. I've read some new books that have come out. I'm revisiting some older ones, and I know what I'm going to do for May and possibly June, but after that, it's anybody's guess. So books about land use or transportation or biking or environmental things generally are all welcome. We have a few events to announce. First of all, we have one in La Crosse on May 30. We're calling it Making Connections in La Crosse. There's a whole series of events. It's all free. I've set up an RSVP that I will include in the notes following up, but it'll start off with a morning ride with the mayor. This is something they do every year. It's organized to highlight successes and gaps in the bicycle infrastructure in the city of La Crosse. In the afternoon, we will have an appetizer reception and some speaker panels. Speakers have not been finalized yet, so details are coming out soon, but that will be at the university there, just to share about like local projects and updates on what's going on in La Crosse. In the evening, we'll be hosting a screening of The Street Project, which is a really excellent documentary by an Emmy Award-winning producer, Jennifer Boyd. That will be at the historic Rivoli Theater downtown. And it's all just very exciting. We'll be doing a similar series of events in the city of Stevens Point at the end of September. A lot of this is follow-on to the Community Transportation Academy program we've been doing, which I'll talk more about in a second. And I also wanted to bring your attention to, I know this feels like a long way off, but it's not too early to start thinking about the Week Without Driving, which is a movement that's really been gaining a lot of traction nationwide. It's this year it is September 30 through October 6th. The idea is to encourage people to go a whole week without driving themselves places. So walking, biking, using transit, or being driven by someone else in order to understand a little better the experience of people who can't drive, who do not have a choice about this, so that we can be more empathetic and make more inclusive and better policy decisions around transportation. And I think Active Wisconsin is all about that. So I thought you all want to know about that. As more information comes out about that, I'll be sharing more, but just wanted to get that in your minds. Another big project we've been doing, you've probably heard about this, especially if you read the e-news or if you live in La Crosse, Beloit, or Stevens Point, but a program we started at the beginning of last year is going strong. It's Community Transportation Academy. This is a free course, 10 weeks long, that we offer in specific cities or regions. It's meant for community members to be more informed and more informed about local transportation planning and more connected with the decision makers in their community, whether they're city staff, MPO staff, elected officials, what have you, so they can be more effective advocates for transportation systems that really work for everybody. So we have guest speakers with local and broad experience and expertise. We organize local tours, and everybody has the opportunity to create a final project at the end of it. So I'm mentioning that especially because today is our final session in Beloit. We started this in La Crosse last year, continued in Stevens Point. I'm wrapping up in Beloit today. We have 7 presentations tonight. I'm very excited to hear what people have to say about parking lot redesign and school safety and busing students and all kinds of stuff. So we're continuing in the fall in Kenosha, and next year we'll be in Green Bay. So if your community is interested in this, please contact me. I really love doing this program and getting to know all these different places. So that is what's up with that. Next, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Carl Glasemeyer, who began with 1,000 Friends last July, I believe. They're our new transportation policy director. And Carl, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just let me know when you need me to advance the slides.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you for having me today. As Susan said, I'm the new transportation policy director from with 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin, and you are correct. I did start in July, so just shy of 1 year. If you could advance. So one advocacy item that I've been working on is the state Department of Transportation is doing an active transportation plan, and they are wanting to hear comments from everyone. I don't actually know their next formal engagement. They've been going to a lot of events. So I do believe that they'll be at the Healthy Communities Summit that's going to be in Madison. They don't always announce exactly where they're going to be. They just kind of are different locations. However, they do have a share comment section on their website. So I encourage everyone to definitely share your concerns, hopes, dreams for what improvements we can make on active transportation on the state level. I actually, before working for 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin, I was working for Wisconsin Department of Transportation as a bicycle and pedestrian planner. So I know a bit of the ins and outs of what they do and what they don't do, and why they do things and why they don't do things. That's been beneficial and also complicating things. I've gotten a little bit too much in the weeds trying to advocate for two particular of items. But I do want to share with you a couple things that 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin thinks are important policies to advocate for. So the first, what WisDOT currently does, WisDOT requires local governments to maintain crosswalks and bicycle markings on their state roadways, their state highways. So whenever there is a crossing of a state highway, they'll go to the local municipality and they'll say, hey, if you want crosswalk markings here, you have to pay for it and agree to maintain it. Despite the fact that the state does maintain their roadway markings, so markings for cars, lane markings, turn lane markings, those sort of things. They don't maintain bicycle and crosswalk markings. They determine that that is an obligation for the locals to take on. Issues with that, twofold. One, the locals might not have the money to commit to it. And the other is whether or not locals have the money, they might elect not to do so, even though it is in the interest of the general public for safety reasons to have proper markings on their roadways. And Steve, yes, you got a question.
Does the state do stop bars, and do they do the handwork for turn indicators and railroad crossings and things like that?
I do believe they do all of that, and whether they have a direct crew that does it or they pay a county to maintain, there are agreements that are set up. So don't quote me on those, but I'm pretty sure they do maintain
So there
stop
would
bars.
be opportunities for economies of scale.
Correct.
If you're out there doing the stop bars, you might as well do the adjacent crosswalks. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Economies of scale for sure. And what might not be a large percentage for cost to a state, not to say our state has tons and tons of money, but uh, it can eat into a local's budget. Paint definitely can. And then mobilizing, like you said, Steve, with the actual doing of the labor, and mobilizing a crew to get out and paint those. So what we are advocating for is letting the state know that this is not the best policy, and ask for them to change their policy so that the state will agree to maintain, or pay locals to maintain if that's part of the agreement of actually doing the labor, but have some sort of financial backing to maintain crosswalk markings and bike markings. There's a added piece that I would love to see, which is that the state would use high visibility crosswalk markings as the default. Right now, they tend to just put two what are called transverse lines. Those are incredibly hard to see for drivers, definitely at a distance, and especially if you're going 35 miles an hour. Often you see them too late to actually yield. So high visibility crosswalk markings actually have a higher yielding rate. There's a lot of research on that. So that should be the default. Steve, you got another
Yeah,
question?
I'm looking at our state highways, and they don't have crosswalks on them, but the ramps do. Does what you're talking about also apply to exit and entrance ramps? Are they state or local responsibility?
For like interstate interchange
Well,
ramps?
I'm thinking of the Verona Road in Fitchburg right now, but so there are obviously no crosswalks across the Verona Road, but there are important crosswalks over the exit and entrance ramps. And would they be subject to this policy of the exit ramps and the entrance ramps are state owned and maintained, but sorry, locals have to do the crosswalks?
Yeah, I'm ramps get a little bit they have a diagram for who's responsible for every interchange point, and so it can get kind of messy on who maintains what. Luckily, when I was working for the Southeast region or WSDOT, the state was willing to take on more responsibility at ramps because it is a crucial entrance and exit to their facility specifically. However, still they were passing off maintenance responsibilities for crosswalk markings onto locals for those, although they would maintain pavement quality or other markings. So it's a little bit of a case by case how it's been diagrammed and how those agreements have been set up for a long time. So I know sometimes the state doesn't necessarily want to adopt a blanket policy on who maintains what. They like to parse it out on every project, every roadway. I just hope they start going towards the direction that's supportive of all users, people walking, biking, and not putting that responsibility on locals. Any other questions? Okay, yeah. So the next thing that advocate for. So luckily the state has said that they are going to be updating their bicycle and pedestrian facilities design guidance. What we would love to see is that they are differentiating design speed of low speed and high speed roadways throughout their whole design manual. So right now, what they've committed to updating bike and pedestrian facilities design, that might just be tacked on. But we know that safe streets are designed from the ground up. The width of lanes, the turn radii. So it would be fantastic if they take this supporting people walking and biking and look throughout their whole design manual. And then finally, if you can go on to the next one, Susan. Is advocating for the state to take a more proactive approach for their safety improvements. Currently, what WisDOT does is they'll only make safety improvements where they've seen crashes occur. So that means that someone likely was already injured, or at least a vehicle was smashed into before they do anything. We know what roadways and what roadway characteristics result in higher crashes. So we're hoping that the state can move towards a proactive approach on safety and try to fix problems before injury and death actually occur. This isn't explicitly directed towards active transportation. However, we know that people who are walking and biking and taking transit are often the most vulnerable roadway users and the ones who suffer the most serious consequences of traffic crashes. So thank you for your time today. And oh, I forgot, this is unnecessary. I forgot to, it's kind of a list at the end, but yeah. So please
Okay.
get involved with that plan update. All right, thanks, Susan.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, and we have time. So I just wanted to say that I will share these slides out afterwards, and also the last slide I think is useful because it offers language that you can just copy and paste right into that comment form if you'd like. So I'll make sure that goes in the email as well. Thanks for joining us, David. Maybe he's left already. So are there other questions for Carl? I didn't mean to rush through. So if you have any questions for Carl about any of this or other work you're doing. Steve?
Yeah, is there anybody else that you know of advocating for these things, Carl? Are you part of a coalition?
Not for these particular asks. Not at this
Okay.
point. I've been trying to share
Well,
them out.
they seem very wise, and I will be writing to you and the Bike Fed's legislative director to get together on this.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much, Steve. I would say one thing, Susan, about that last slide. There were a couple things that I was advocating for that look like the state is going to be doing, so I didn't add them into their own slide. The state recently looks like they are going to be trying to get a bike and ped volume model for the whole state. So they are working with UWM's Robert Schneider on doing so. So hopefully that all goes smoothly and actually moves forward. But it's important to know where people are walking and biking across the state, and so luckily the state's moving to actually do that.
And I don't think it hurts to tell them that we support that either. So they're not just doing it in a vacuum. All right. Well, the last part of our meeting is to just kind of go around and share what you're up to, any updates. If you have anything you're excited about, anything you have questions about, any events you have coming up, whatever it is. So you've heard from me, you've heard from Carl. I think I'll just open the floor. Why don't you raise your hand so I can kind of keep an order of people, but now's the time.